Hi there, it's Rob Sayer again. Welcome to another of our short tutorials on using Vectorworks Spotlight. Last time we looked at setting up Spotlight so that we had all the palettes we needed in front of us and we were ready to start drawing. We also looked at setting the unit scale and the units to draw in, and also basic navigation of the views, so finding your way around the document stuff. Today we're going to look at drawing some basic primitive shapes to specific dimensions and some accuracy and general CAD stuff, because obviously CAD's very important, accuracy is very important in CAD. So we'll look at drawing some basic shapes to size and putting them on the document where we want them. A basic requirement for a CAD drawing. So I'm going to fire up Vectorworks. You see I've got my blank page here. If you remember from last time, it was a A3 at 1 to 50. And so the first thing to do is when we're drawing basic shapes in Vectorworks, there's a lot of tools that can draw different shapes, and I'm not going to go through them all, but basically let's start off using the rectangle. So I'm coming over to my basic tool palette over here, and I'm going to choose rectangle. Now you can see if I'm going to draw a rectangle, you might want to have a go at this. Basically what you do is you will start the point you're going to start at, you drag and click and you drag out and then click again, and that creates the rectangle. Now you can see that's got a line all the way around it, a kind of a highlight around it, and that means it's selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit backspace on my Mac or delete it on the PC and it will go away. So that's the basic deal with drawing rectangle and other shapes. You click, drag and click again, which creates the shape. Now, if you remember last time, I talked about the contextual menu up here along this line below the views menu. That has, when you're in rectangle mode, that has a number of options, and you can see what they are here. And if you select an option, it will tell you here on the right hand side what that option does. So ordinarily I might draw a rectangle from its corner. So the first one selected, I draw a rectangle, drag, click and draw it from its corner. I didn't have to draw it from the top left hand corner, I could draw it from the bottom right hand corner and drag it out the other way. But basically that's the first option there. The next option is another one which might be quite useful, is that you can draw the rectangle from the centre. So you can see there I've got it centred on the point there. So you can see that's quite a useful set of tools to be able to draw rectangles in a different way. All of the tools, all the drawing tools have similar options, but that just happens to be the rectangle one. So I'm going to set mine to draw from the corner again. Now this time I want to draw a rectangle to a specific size. I'm going to draw it 6 metre by 6 metre square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click at a point in the document with my rectangle tool selected. I'm going to kind of just move my mouse. You can see already when I started moving the mouse there's a little blue box on the bottom right hand corner which gives me some dimensions on it, and what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to hit tab, which is the long button on your keyboard just above caps lock, which has got a kind of an arrow on it. If I hit tab, you can see the first dimension there, the X dimension, has got a highlight. So if I type 6,000 for millimeters and then I hit tab again, the Y dimension then has a highlight, and I'm going to do the same again, only this time I'm going to put 6m. So that's just given me 6 meters, according to what you would make sense, wouldn't it? So I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to hit enter again, and that has drawn me a 6 meter by 6 meter rectangle, a square. Now that's drawn it up high in the document. We'll go through why that happened in a minute. But basically, what I want to get you to understand first is the way that you can draw a specific dimension using the tab tool. So I'm going to delete that, and let's just look at that again. I'm going to draw, and this time it will be a 1 meter by 2 meter piece of staging. So I'm going to click, drag out a bit, tab, 2,000 and 1,000, or as we did before, 1 meter. Do you remember in the previous tutorial I talked about the fact that you could draw, or you could write in Vectorworks boxes in different units? So I've written 1m and it gives me a 1 meter. Now I need to hit return twice for that to actually kind of take effect. Now the next thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that this 1 meter by 2 meter rectangle, if you look over here in the object info browser, you can see that this rectangle has a width of 2,000 and a height of 1,000. Now I could change that to a height of 500, enter, and that changes there. So when you're drawing, you can actually draw it using the tab method. So you can, draw it out, tab it, 1, 2. You can actually draw it out that way. But if you wanted to alter it afterwards, you could just go back and change the dimensions here. So you could do it one of two ways. I quite like using the tab method. It's quite good for a lot of other different shapes that have more complicated parameters on them. So that's basically how you draw something to exactly the right size. And obviously, scale accuracy in CAD is very important. The other thing that you want to do with your rectangle is you might want to draw it from a specific point. Now, if I had one piece of staging here, and I wanted to draw another piece of staging straight downwards, going that way, I could select my rectangle tool over in the toolbar, start at this bottom corner, and then click and drag. Now, if I type in the same dimensions I did before, so we'll call it 2m and 1m, 2 meter by 1 meter, and double enter, you can see that's not really done what I wanted it to do, because what's happened is it's taken 2 meters, the x size has been 2 meters that way, and 1 meter up. So it's been plus each time, to the right being plus, and to the left being minus, and up being plus, and down being minus. So if I want to draw that again, I can basically do my x dimension wants to be minus 1 meter, so that it extends off to the left. And my y dimension wants to be minus 2 meters. And I'll do double enter again. Now you can see that's drawn exactly what I wanted. It's drawn the staging below and in line with the one above. So obviously you could, if you were drawing staging, you'd probably end up copy and pasting, and you might end up doing all kinds of things to make lots of bits of staging. But what that does show you is how, when you're using the tab selection, dimension selection, you can control which way it's going. Remember the first one I did, it shot right up in the top of the screen and disappeared off the screen. So if you were to do things in plus, they'll go to the right of your starting point, and if you're to do things as a minus number, they'll go to the left. Similarly, if you're going plus, it will go up, and if you want to go down with your dimension, it will go down. So that's quite a handy tool, really, because it means that you can kind of start a shape at a specific point and then govern which way it's going to extend out from that point afterwards. So let's just get rid of those. In order to select a shape, you'll just notice I just selected those. You need to be back in the 2D selection tool, because if you're in rectangle and you've drawn a rectangle and you then try and get this other rectangle and do something with it, it just draws another rectangle. In order to select and manipulate objects, you need to be back in 2D selection tool, which is the top one in the basic toolbar. The quick way to do that is to hit X on your keyboard. So you've selected rectangle, you've done a rectangle, you've done another one, you've drawn a few rectangles, and then in order to select them, you can hit X, and you can see some little stretch boxes come around there, and then you're in 2D selection. You can click and select and delete, or backspace on a Mac. In order to get back to rectangle again, there's keyboard shortcuts for all these things, but you can just go and find it in the menu if you want. But hitting X to go back to 2D selection is really, really useful. It's a bit like the thing we talked about before, using holding down space bar to pan things around the document, or holding down the mouse wheel. It's one of those things. Hitting X is one of those things that you find yourself doing in Vectorworks quite a lot. So if I were going to draw something else, I might draw maybe a circle or something. Again, you can see the circle. There's a number of ways that you can set its parameters, either from the center, which it is set at the moment, the first one on the contextual menu, or set in a diameter and extended in different ways. So that's a similar thing. Again, with the circle, you can tab and choose your diameter. Let's call it 1, 2, 20. And double enter, and so basically any of the drawing tools that you have available to you, you can use that tab enter of a dimension to very quickly give you an exact dimension of what you're trying to draw. I kind of prefer to do it than doing it the other way, which some people kind of do when they're just starting out, which is to draw the shape and then click it and then go back and edit it in the object info browser. So we can do 2, and then the next one could be 1000 or 1m. Oop, rather too many in there. So I could just do 2m. And so that's kind of a bit of a long way of doing it. So I kind of tend to prefer to use the tab entry method. The other thing that's interesting about the object info pane and also a lot of other data entry boxes in Vectorworks is that it will do calculations for you. So just to illustrate that, if I was going to say I wanted to make a rectangle based on 2 dimensions width-wise, so I could say, well, I know the dimension is I need to add something together, so I could add 1252 plus 0756 0776, and what that's done is it's calculated it as being 2001 millimeters. So that's another good tip in Vectorworks. If you want to add, subtract, or do any kind of multiplication or whatever of dimensions, you can actually type them straight into the box, and Vectorworks will sort out the maths for you. And although you wouldn't necessarily, obviously, draw a rectangle in that way, it's certainly something that you would use a lot, especially if you're drawing something based on a set of dimensions. You might find that you want to add 2 measurements together to work out where exactly a thing is in space by adding these 2 together. So you don't have to do it with a calculator, you can just do it in the box. The last thing I want to talk about today is the document origin. Now, when you're working in a theatre or whatever, you often have a point where you measure things from. In theatre, we often use the setting line, or the plaster line, as they sometimes call it in the States, which is the sort of a line across the front between the 2 corners of the pros, and the centre line. So you might measure things sort of up and then across from these 2 points. So if you had a theatre, let me just draw a very quick, not very big theatre, 7 odd metre theatre. If you had a point that had a centre line like this, so I'll just do my centre line down here, and I had a setting line, say, there. I'm going to make a setting line based on the front of the theatre there. So this point here, where my mouse is going to be my kind of measurement point, my datum point for everything to to be measured from. So what I want to do is I want to set my ruler, this part up here, you know, with the rulers going along at the bottom, so that the centre of 0 is there. So I can measure things up and about from there. So I'm going to hit this little kind of targety sight thing over in the top right hand corner of the rulers bar, and it says set origin. Oh, and I'm just make sure I'm in top plan view, because that's helpful. So I need to be in top plan view to do that, and I'm just going to click, and it says, do you want to set the origin? And you go yes, and I'm going to get it on straight on top of that thing, snap it straight on top of that little point there, and I'm going to set it there. Now you can see at the top here, you can see my 0 is there, and also underneath this tool set my 0 is also in line. So this is the point where everything is now being measured from. Now if I wanted to draw a circle somewhere off on stage somewhere, I could draw my circle. I'm just going to tab it and call it a 1 meter circle. Now, if I wanted to place that somewhere on stage specifically, say I wanted to place it 2 meters up the center line and 1.5 meters that way, to the right of the center line, I can go into the object info browser, and I can put the center, it says center X, and I'm going to put it at, what did I say, 1.5 meters, and I'm going to set my center Y 2 meters. So that's now 2 meters up from the datum point here, my center line, and 1.5 meters from my from my center line. So that there is a good place, a good way that you can organize the whole of your document. So if you set a good origin, set a good 0 point, you can organize all of your other stuff from that. And as I say, in theatre, that's quite often where the center line and the setting line converge downstage center. So that's it for today. That's about drawing accuracy. What you could do is you could experiment with some other of the drawing tools and the different menus in the contextual menu and the different ways of things happening in the drawing tools. So we'll see you next time.